So this lesson is about maps and arrays. What we're going to do is work backwards from the DMX system that can send DMX data to the patch. From there we can work backwards and figure out what maps and arrays can do for us and how we build them and how we move them around. So let's go back into the editor and have a look at the system we've got so far. So this is what we've just been building. This may be confusing people at this point because we're not going to use a lot of this going forwards. This is a great way to check things, see how they're working. It's returning values from the attributes that we've received from the patch, but we need to send to the patch to get the DMX to actually go out. I've created here a send to DMX to output port, which is a hack, a way of sending the DMX directly without going via the patch. So we've drawn information out of the patch, we have broken it down to its constituent parts, and we're sending it straight out as DMX data. But there's nothing telling the patch how to move that light. So we're kind of going round and round in circles, and the system that we'll use to control the to tell the fixture what to do is the same system that will send the DMX out of the ArcNet port. So we won't be using all of this, and I'm just going to disconnect this now just to stop that from sending DMX we don't need. We're going to head up a little bit. Let me just check what the node is called so I get the right one. We had a look at it earlier. It is called the send DMX node. So I'm just going to load it up here. Send DMX. It's not come up. Let's turn off the context sensitivity. There it is, send DMX. So it didn't come up automatically. I had to choose it. Okay. Now this is going to send, see, target is DMX fixture patch, as opposed to send DMX to output port. Right? This is sending raw DMX straight out of my node as ArcNet. This is sending DMX into the fixture patch. When it's in the fixture patch, it finds the light in here, the mania, which is attached to an output port. So even though we're sending the data via the patch, it's still coming out the same port. So there's a difference there. This is better if you've got fixtures in the patch. If you haven't, then you can use the other one. Now we're going to connect this up to the controller. In fact, I think I connected it up to the event tick. Yes, I did. So this will connect to the event tick. We might as well do that now. I am going to add another sequence in here. Seems like the right place to put it. So just to make it neat, I'm going to send this one that way, and then send this top one up to my send DMX node. And if you double click on the line, you can create these little nodes which are quite handy for sort of neatening everything up. So I'm sending it up there and moving it out of the way, so we can now have all our tools here. Okay, and actually I'm just going to move this right over here, which may seem a little bit excessive, but I just need a bit of space for this because there's going to be quite a lot of stuff happening here. First of all, the target needs to come from the same place as these attributes. Where we've collected our fixture, we now need to send that information to the DMX patch. So we're going to get the fixture from the library and we're going to send it to the target. So it's going to send DMX to the fixture patch for that light, for the light that we've chosen. The attribute map is going to be made up of these same elements here, right? So we've got these values, we pulled them out of the patch. We can do the same thing in this direction, but you notice this is slightly different, right? It's got these blue line or blue dots and the green lines, which is different to the map here, which has got 3 green dots and 3 green lines. That's because these maps are actually made up of different sets of variables. Now, just to demonstrate how that works, I'm going to promote this to a variable, create a random variable. There it is. It's called map, and you can see here what it's made up of. If I drag this out, see, so it's got an integer and a byte together. So that's what a map is, right? An array is all the data relating to a collection of the same numbers. A map is like an array, but it's got 2 sets of data in there. You've got the integer and the byte next to each other. Because we can see we've got the key here is the integer, which is sending which attribute we're trying to look for, and then the byte is sending a value between 0 and 254, which is 255 bytes of data, to tell you what the DMX value is on that channel. Okay, so that's what the map's doing there. Delete that. I'm going to delete the map from our variables list as well now I've created it, because we don't want lots of random variables hanging about. Now if we come up here and we're going to do the same thing, promote this to a variable, we've got a get variable that's come up. It's created a new one, again it's called DMX attribute name. See, the difference is this time it's got DMX attribute and an integer. So it's looking for these two bits of information. Fine, okay. We don't know what they are at the moment. DMX attribute will probably be the attribute actually in the fixture. Integer, I don't know, might be the DMX value, but it needs converting to a byte surely to go out to the DMX patch. The DMX subsystem is doing all that work for us. We don't really need to know. What's handy about the context editor and blueprints is that we can find out what it needs to get information into it by just dragging out the pin, let go. If you turn on the context sensitivity, these are all the things that we can do with this. So in utilities, we've got arrays, we've got maps, so we can make another map again. We've got DMX tools, so we get the DMX attribute values. And what we're actually going to use is, I'm just jumping back to my guide, is ultimately we're going to try and make a map. But there's something else sitting in between. We need a variable. We do still need a variable for it. So we actually created a variable here when we clicked promote this to variable. But it needs to be a set variable. So I'm going to add this here and create set variable. Okay, and then later on I'm going to connect that in. I'll do the event chart later because it's quite fiddly. So now we have a attribute map. I think I'll leave it called DMX attribute map, or attribute map as a name, because it's the only one we're going to have at the moment. And now we need to make a map. So that's going to take all of our UI information and send it in. So to do that, we need another make map command. So I'm going to drag this pin out. Let's go to utilities, map, make map. Okay. And this is exactly the same as what we did down here in the last lesson, is that we're able to filter by the attributes that are loaded into this, this fixture. So it doesn't know what's in the fixture, we have to choose it. So we know that the first one is shutter. Where's shutter? There it is. So just have to keep double checking that you can see me still. Yeah, good. We have, I'm going to close this down a little bit. It's a bit big. We need to add some more pins because we have 6 attributes, I believe. So we've got shutter, then we have, let's go back to my guide, we've got dimmer, which is our intensity. So the shutter is actually doing the macros that we saw earlier as well. So there's quite a lot of things in that range, and I'm going to talk through in a minute about how we create different values for operating that. Then we've got color, so we can leave that as it is. Gobo is down here. Then we've got pan and then tilt. And they're all the attributes that are configured in the patch. Okay, so these values here, if I change that, if I set that to 64, I think that's what starts the first macro. When it sends DMX, it's going to push DMX straight into the attribute map, which if you come up here will be, so key 0 is the shutter. So it's going to load into the shutter a value of 64 bytes, which according to our DMX chart over here, what would that do? Let's have a look. So on address 1, 64, oh, that was nearly as close. It's a fast strobe. So it was 69 where it started. So that's what's going on there. Okay, that's what the data's doing. Just try and picture that in your mind as we're going. Now we built a dimmer earlier with the user interface. So let's come back over here on value change, slider intensity. And now we actually applied this to a variable called variable int slider, intensity slider, which was doing loads of stuff, sending information to the print string. Let's just tidy this all up. We don't need any of this now. What we do need is the variable. Now I could send this value all the way over to the other side of the blueprint to go into the component we just built, but actually I think it's neater to build loads of variables and have all of the sliders, all the UI, just process into the variables. So I can keep these nice and neat, keep them over here, and we'll create variables for each of the UI elements. Then we can call it back as a get. So that's a set. There it is there. Let's come over here, and I'm going to take my variable int slider, get it, and push it into my dimmer. And it's converted the float information into an integer. So I'm just try and make that look tidy, but it's really hard. Can't do it. I won't be able to sleep tonight. Okay, and I'm also going to double click on this line. I want to tidy this up because it's getting in my way. Make it look neater. That's a bit better. Okay, so now we are going to get variable information from the slider. It's going to get stored into this variable by this component here. So when the slider has any sort of action at all, it's going to take the value and set it as a variable. So every time that the slider updates, which you'll be doing on tick if you're dragging it along, updating this information, which will then be pushed live into this. The reason for this set here is that I'm not entirely sure, but it doesn't work unless you've got it. It has to push the information into a variable that then goes into the attribute map. I mean, I thought you could just do this. It works, and now this isn't doing anything. But when I tried it the first time, it wasn't working. So, and all the tutorials I read suggested this. I'm going to add another node. I'm just going to stick it here next to this one to keep it neat. And I'm just going to use this to drag over here, because if I had to disconnect this, it would be a really long run to go all the way back to the other side of the blueprint. So that's just a nice way of stopping you from losing your event node just by creating some little nodes there, and you can just delete things then. Delete that off. Ooh, let's have a little think about it. So I've deleted. Oh, it's deleted the whole thing now. So Control Z to undo that. There you go. Makes it nice and neat. So we need to build more attributes here, which we are doing in later lessons. So I wanted to go over arrays quickly, and we've talked about it a few times, but I want to show you what's actually going on in them, because we're going to come back to them a little bit when we do gobos and colors. Now you've seen this attribute map, and it says down here, please compile the blueprint. This is significant for both arrays and maps. If we want to make any changes to this map, you can do it in the blueprint, or you actually do it, you can expose it and do it in the editor as well. So if I compile it and save, see that's now changed. It says attribute map 0 elements. Now in this case we're building the map using this tool, but we could actually add our own elements. So if I change that to dimmer, for instance, and I can set another one, change that to shutter. Actually, I've got that long way around, haven't I? That would be dimmer, and that one would be shutter. Okay. We can then create all of those elements so they can be seen somewhere else. So we could make that change. Now, when you're doing a make map, it is building this for you. So we've effectively done this by creating all of this. But when you've built it this way, you can do other things with it later. For instance, you can expose all of these to the editor, and you could change them live as you're working. You could have them controlled by the UI directly in the map. So you can do some clever things just to make things a bit neater. I quite like doing this because I like to see what's going on, but it is very messy. You have lots of broken out exposed elements, which you don't really have to do. Like this is, it's a spider web of content. Eventually we're going to have variables plugging into all of these, when we could have data come straight from a collection of UI maps into this map to operate it. It would be much neater. So that's quite important to understand. I'm going to do a different one, which might be interesting. I'm going to create a new variable. I'm going to call it test array. Oh, and I'm going to give it my prefix of variable. And I'm going to press this button here, which is going to make it visible. So now it's public. It can be seen in the editor. It can be seen by other blueprints, which is really useful. It's currently a Boolean. A Boolean is just a check. It's on or off, 0 or 1. I'm going to make it an integer. And then I'm going to change it here. So at the moment, it's just a single container. I'm going to change it to an array. And you see we've got maps there as well. I'm not going to go into sets because I don't understand them yet. But an array is a collection of individual variable components. And here it says, please compile the blueprint. So I'm going to hit compile. And now I can add some elements here. Now these are numbers that can be applied to the array. So this array automatically has 5 numbers, and I'm going to call these 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and that array could then do something. I don't know what. We could get it. We could do another get to turn it into a individual lines, and we could have 0 go to 0. I could have another one that comes out of that. This is messy. We should do this with a node that tells it what number to be. Send that to, I'm not going to send, I'm going to do number 2 because I don't want to mess up what I've already done. 2, send that to here. And it's pulling all those numbers out and sticking it into this map. Now, if I compile that again and save, when I'm in the editor, it's not going to work here because it's a UI element, but you'd see it in here if it's a public blueprint. So you could then select something, and in here you would have all of those parameters that you just created, and you could edit them live during the project. But the UI doesn't appear here, and it might be that it's hidden somewhere. I've not found it before, but the idea is that that's how you access it. Now, if I was doing this with a normal blueprint, and it's worth doing this, just as I've started, I should demonstrate it properly, right? I'm going to go back into my blueprints folder, and I'm going to create a new blueprint class called test. I'm going to choose an actor, okay? I'm going to call it test BP, okay? And that's going to go into the scene, okay? So it's the only thing in the scene at the moment, and I'm going to edit it. It's going to look exactly the same as the blueprint for the widget. We have to go into the event graph, and then you see it looks exactly the same. So you can have 3D elements in this, but we're just working in here. I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it test variable. I'm just making something up now. Array. Array. Name it. Call it an integer. Make it public. Drag it into my scene. I'm going to do set variable array. Might as well call it on begin play. So as soon as the scene loads, it's going to start loading up this integer. Oh no, wrong thing. I don't want to click that. I need to click on this. We're going to compile and save. Oh, it's over here this time. So this array. Oh, I haven't made it an array yet. It's just a single variable. So I'm going to change that to an array. It's asking me, do I want to do this? Because now it's in my scene. It wants to check that I'm actually doing it. So it's checking all of my other blueprints to see if this is going to affect anything. And it's saying, oh no, you can't have that because there's no information. I didn't want to set, I wanted a get, didn't I? Right, I need a get, oh sorry, I'm going all over the place now. Get an array. So this is going to now output some array elements. So we can add these in here, create some things. I'm going to call them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Do a get to get it out, and then I'm going to do a print string. There it is. Okay, and put that on event begin play. So as soon as it loads, it's going to load up one of the numbers, a number that's attached to this. And I'm going to do, like I did in the other example, just do a couple of these. Get a copy, make that number 2, and send that to another print string. So I'm going to copy this one. So you can have more than one. Connect those up. You'll now print these in order. Okay, and compile and save. Now, if I go into my editor and I select this blueprint class, you will find all of my variables here that I built into the array. So this is a nice way of being able to access something when it's in the editor. So if I hit play, so it's now printing lots of things. If I click on here, I can now change these numbers. All right, and it's not printing. Oh, because it only prints on begin play. I need to make it print on tick. So like the other system. So go back into here, event tick. There you go. If I didn't have something else running in tick in another blueprint, then that would have worked because you'd have seen the numbers. But because there's something else running in tick, it pushes the values out of the way as soon as it loads. So now if you try play, there you go. So it's printing 3 numbers because we've got 3 print strings running in our project. We've got the one in the UI widget blueprint, and we had the 2 in this BP test. So now if I change this number, you see the numbers are changing in the print string, and I can do this live. So this is really handy if you wanted to operate something in the editor, like, you know, position of the sun or change intensity of the light. You could do it here using the editor, and all of these can be exposed. So there you go. That's a point of an array, is that you have this really good access to it, and we can share this information between the you can share lots of information between nodes without having to do all of this breaking apart that I'm doing here. But we're staying with it for the moment, because breaking everything apart is a really nice way to train and to show people how things work. So we're going to stay with this for a little while. So I'm just going to delete this stuff out that we created, because I'll only do that to demonstrate what an array was. And then we're going to go into the next lesson, where we're going to look at how we can start creating some of these individual UI elements and construct them so they can send data into our make map.